Before the ranch fell quiet, it had a rhythm, one Eliza Hawthorne set without ever seeming to try. Mornings began before the sun crested the hills. Eliza would step out onto the porch with a mug of coffee gone cold more often than not, breathing in the damp scent of grass and hay, as if she were listening to the land wake up. She never hurried the day. She believed animals and people needed time to arrive fully in their bodies. Mila remembered how her mother moved through the barns, slow, deliberate, unarmed by whips or sharp commands. Eliza's hands were steady, her voice low. She spoke to horses the way others spoke to frightened children, not to control them, but to let them know they were seen. "Don't tell them what to do," Eliza would say. "Tell them you're here. The rest comes later." Solara had come to the ranch skittish and half-wild, a young mare with too much fire and nowhere to put it. Nightwind arrived months later, already trained, already strong, but closed off, suspicious of hands and pressure. Eliza never tried to dominate either of them. She watched. She waited. She let silence do the work. She noticed the way Solara's ears flicked when the wind changed, the way Nightwind held his breath before unfamiliar sounds. She adjusted herself instead of demanding they adjust to her. Over time, the horses learned something rare, that being near Eliza was safe. Mila and Theo grew up inside those lessons. Theo trailed behind his mother constantly, asking endless questions, listening wide-eyed as she explained why a horse refused a gait or why forcing a saddle too soon could ruin months of trust. Mila watched more quietly, absorbing the precision, the calm, the patience she would later cling to like a lifeline. Eliza laughed easily. She sang while she worked. Sometimes, late in the afternoon, music drifted from the open barn doors as she brushed Solara's coat or leaned her forehead against Nightwind's, breathing with him until his muscles softened. They were not just her horses, they were her partners. The day of the accident was unremarkable until it wasn't. Eliza had gone down to the creek to clear storm debris, humming under her breath, boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. She worked the way she always did, unhurried, attentive, trusting the land the same way the land had always seemed to trust her. The bank gave way without warning. A sharp cry, a rush of water. The sound of something breaking, not just bone or ground, but certainty itself. After that, the ranch stopped breathing. The days that followed blurred together, heavy and unreal. The barns stood open but hollow, the paddocks quiet except for restless hooves. No music drifted through the doors. No low voice calmed spooked animals or laughed at small mistakes. The air itself felt wrong, like it was waiting for someone who would never come back. Mila Hawthorne was 16, old enough to understand exactly what had been lost, and old enough to feel responsible for it. She moved through the ranch like someone holding her breath, doing what needed to be done because stopping meant thinking. She had grown up riding horses, had competed beside her mother, had followed instructions well enough, but she had never truly learned what Eliza knew. She knew now how much had been given to her freely, without question, without the expectation that she would ever have to stand alone. Theo, 14, carried the grief differently. It sat in his chest like restless energy, pushing him toward noise one moment and silence the next. He avoided the creek entirely. He talked to the horses even when they ignored him. He had always ridden because it was fun, because it meant being close to his mother, not because he had understood the depth of the craft behind it. They both realized too late how much of the knowledge had lived only in Eliza. Their father, William Hawthorne, tried. He woke early, stayed late, fixed fences with tired hands and a hollow focus. He knew the land, knew the accounts, knew how to keep the ranch technically running, but he had never been the heart of it. Horses tolerated him, at best. Where Eliza listened, William managed. Where she felt, he calculated. Grief hollowed him out, leaving behind a man doing his best with tools that were never meant for this kind of loss. It wasn't enough. Without Eliza, Solara and Nightwind changed. Solara paced endlessly, wearing circles into the dirt, ears pinned, eyes sharp and searching. Nightwind refused saddles outright, rearing or freezing whenever Mila or Theo tried to approach with reins. He wasn't violent, he was unreachable. It wasn't cruelty, it was grief, it was confusion. It was a bond abruptly severed. Bills stacked up quietly at first, then all at once. Feed costs, vet fees, property taxes. The ranch, already strained, began to buckle. William sold what he could without touching the horses. He worked himself into exhaustion, but effort could not replace expertise. When the debt collectors arrived, they came without threats or raised voices. They were horse people themselves, knowledgeable, practical, unsentimental. They walked the paddock slowly, boots sinking into dirt softened by recent rain. They studied Solara and Nightwind with careful professional eyes. They understood exactly what they were worth. William stood with his hands clenched at his sides, shoulders bowed in a way Mila had never seen before. "I just need more time," he said hoarsely. "I can sell equipment, take on more work. I'll figure something out." One of the collectors shook his head, not unkindly. "Time is the one thing we can't extend, Mr. Hawthorne. The ranch has been bleeding for years. Eliza was what kept it afloat." The words landed like a blow. Mila felt Theo stiffen beside her. William swallowed. "Then take the land," he said quietly, "but not the horses." The collectors exchanged a look. "The horses are the value," one of them replied. "Bloodlines like these don't come around twice." Silence stretched, heavy and unbearable. "What if we win the summer riding competition?" The voice was Mila's, steady despite the way her heart was pounding. Everyone turned to look at her. Theo stared at her in surprise, then understanding sparked in his eyes. "There's prize money," Theo added quickly, stepping forward. "Enough to cover a big part of the debt. Mom used to win it all the time." William turned sharply. "No," he said. "Absolutely not. You're not ready." Mila didn't look away from the collectors. "We've been riding our whole lives," she said. "We know the horses. We just need the chance." One of the collectors raised an eyebrow. "And if you don't win?" Theo's voice was quieter but firm. "Then you can take them." The collectors studied the siblings again, not as children this time, but as riders, as risks. Finally, one of them nodded. 6 months, he said. "You train, you bond, you enter the annual summer riding competition." "And if we win," Mila said, her hands trembling now, "we keep the horses and pay you with the prize money." "And if you lose," the man finished calmly, "Solara and Nightwind come with us." The bargain was brutal, but it was fair. Failure would mean losing the last living pieces of their mother. Day one began before sunrise. Mila was already in the barn, tack laid out in perfect lines the way her mother used to do it. Bridle polished, saddle centered, girth folded just so. She had written a schedule the night before and taped it to the stall door. Feed, groom, warm-up, groundwork, ride, repeat. "If we do this right," she muttered to herself, tightening Solara's cinch, "they'll remember." Solara did not remember. The mare shifted immediately, muscles tightening beneath Mila's hands. Her ears flicked back, not in anger but in warning. When Mila lifted the bridle, Solara tossed her head and stepped sideways, nearly knocking Mila into the stall wall. "Easy," Mila said sharply, trying to steady her voice. "Easy, Solara, you know this." Solara snorted and pulled away, eyes wide, hooves scraping nervously against the packed dirt. Across the aisle, Nightwind stood like a statue, too still. Theo approached with the halter, careful, hopeful. "Hey," Theo said softly, "it's just me. You remember me, right?" Nightwind didn't move. His eyes tracked every step Theo took, dark and alert. When Theo lifted his hand, Nightwind's body tensed, neck arching, breath held. "Okay, okay," Theo whispered, freezing. "I'm not gonna touch you yet." Mila glanced over, irritation flickering through her grief. "Theo, you can't hesitate like that. He senses it." Theo shot back quietly. "He senses everything." Mila tried again with Solara, slow, deliberate, exactly the way she'd seen her mother do it 100 times. She adjusted her posture, softened her grip, spoke in a calm, low tone. But it wasn't the same. Solara jerked free, the reins slipping through Mila's fingers. The sudden movement startled both of them. Mila stumbled back, heart hammering. "Great!" she breathed, blinking hard. "Just great!" They tried again, and again, and again. Each attempt ended the same. Solara restless and pulling away, Nightwind either freezing completely or backing off just out of reach. Sweat broke out along Mila's spine, not from work, but from the creeping certainty settling in her chest. "I don't know how to do this," she thought, "not the way Mom did." By mid-morning, frustration hung thick in the barn. Theo gave up on the halter and sat cross-legged in the straw near Nightwind's stall instead. Mila noticed with a sharp inhale, ready to scold, then stopped when she heard him talking. "I'm sorry," Theo said quietly, staring at the ground. "I know we're not doing this right. Mom always knew what you needed before you did." Nightwind's ears flicked. Theo swallowed. "I miss her, too." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Nightwind shifted, just slightly, and lowered his head an inch. Theo didn't move, didn't reach. He just stayed. Mila watched from across the aisle, chest tightening. With Solara, she tried force one last time, insisting on the routine, tightening the reins, asking for obedience. Solara responded by dancing sideways, nearly rearing. Mila stepped back, breath shaking. "Stop!" Theo said suddenly, standing. "Mila! Stop pushing!" "I'm not pushing," Mila snapped. "I'm doing exactly what Mom taught us." Theo shook his head. "No, you're doing what she let us see." That landed harder than anything else that day. They took the horses out to the paddock instead. No tack, no pressure, just observation. That's when Mila noticed it. The way Solara kept circling the lower fence. How Nightwind positioned himself closer to the creek side, body angled outward, always watching. Not random, deliberate. "They're not rejecting us," Theo said quietly, following her gaze. "They're watching something." Mila swallowed, the knot in her throat tightening. She lowered her notebook, finally letting herself stop trying to control the moment. For the first time since the accident, she didn't correct, didn't command. She watched, and somewhere deep beneath the frustration and grief, she felt it, the faint echo of her mother's presence, not in discipline, but in listening. The next few days were a mix of observation, small experiments, and frequent setbacks. Mila tried to apply logic, mapping movements, timing feedings, counting steps. "If we approach from this angle," she muttered, "then Solara should step forward instead of back." Solara did not. She stepped sideways. Twice. Mila bit her lip. "Focus," she whispered. "Focus. Patience." Mom's voice. Theo wandered around the paddock, hands trailing along fence rails, speaking in a low, steady stream. "Remember when Mom let you graze by that old oak?" he murmured to Nightwind. "She said it was safe. You liked that." He crouched, watching the horse's tense muscles. "I know you miss her. Me too." Sometimes, Nightwind flicked an ear. Sometimes he shifted weight. Sometimes, just for a heartbeat, he allowed Theo to come closer. It was not obedience. It was recognition. One afternoon, Mila caught herself pausing mid-step, observing rather than directing. She noticed a pattern. Solara's pacing peaked near the lower pasture, along the creek bank. Nightwind froze whenever the wind shifted across the water, ears swiveling, body taut. "They're guarding something," Theo said quietly one morning, pointing to hoof prints in the mud. They always come back here. Mila knelt, tracing the prints with a finger. The creek, the bank, that's where Mom... Her voice faltered. She swallowed hard. That's where she fell. Later that day, they gathered in the small kitchen. The sun slanted through dusty windows, and William leaned against the counter, rubbing a hand over his jaw. I'm not sure this is a good idea, he said quietly. You've seen how they act. Solara and Nightwind, they aren't easy. And winning that competition? That's a lot to ask. Mila held her notebook tightly, forcing herself to speak evenly. Dad, we have to try. If we don't, we'll lose them, and we'll never forgive ourselves. Theo added softly, we can't let the debt take them, not after everything Mom taught us. She believed we could do it. William sighed, running a hand through his hair. You think you can step into her shoes? You think 6 months is enough? Mila swallowed. It won't be perfect. But we'll learn. We'll figure it out. We'll listen to them, just like Mom would have wanted. A long pause. William's eyes softened. You're brave, he said finally, voice low. I just don't want you getting hurt. We won't, Theo said, though his hands were trembling. We've got each other. William shook his head, a wry, tired smile tugging at his lips. You've got guts. All right, you do it your way. Just promise me you'll watch each other and the horses. Safety first. Mila nodded, a shiver of resolve running through her. We promise, Theo grinned. And we'll make Mom proud. William didn't say anything more. He left the kitchen, but that afternoon he walked through the paddock, quietly observing as the siblings worked. He didn't intervene, didn't give advice, just watched. It was the first step in trusting them to carry forward what Eliza had built. 2 months had passed since the collector's ultimatum. Mila and Theo had been working steadily, but progress was painfully slow. Every morning began the same. Damp hay dust in the air, the smell of wet earth, and the quiet tension of 2 horses who remembered love and loss in equal measure. Mila approached Solara with her usual precision. Saddle centered, girth cinched, reins adjusted exactly. She spoke softly but firmly, echoing every lesson she remembered watching her mother give. Solara shifted, ears back, snorting in irritation, then stepped sideways, narrowly avoiding Mila's boot. Focus! Mila hissed under her breath. Just 1 step. 1! Mom could do this in her sleep. Theo, on the other side of the barn, was crouched beside Nightwind, scratching a line in the dirt with a stick. You're okay, he whispered. It's just me. Remember when Mom gave you those sugar cubes after your first run? Nightwind lifted his massive head just slightly, flicked an ear toward Theo, and then froze again. Mila groaned, dropping her hands. It's useless. We're not getting anywhere. I'm failing, Theo. I can't... You're not failing, Theo interrupted gently. We just haven't figured them out yet. That's all. Remember what Dad said? Safety first. We need patience. Patience? The word felt like a slap. Mila had spent hours watching, studying, correcting, analyzing, repeating, and all she'd learned so far was that she wasn't her mother. Not even close. They decided to sit down later that morning in the barn loft, notebooks open, plans sketched across smudged pages of mud and chalk. Okay, Mila said, rubbing her temples. We need a real plan. Something that isn't just me doing what I think Mom would do and you whispering stories. Theo frowned. Stories work. Sometimes. They're listening, Mila. They notice. I know that, she snapped, but we're not moving forward. We're spinning in place. He hesitated, then said, what if we mix it? You do the structure. I do the quiet. Not just random stories, but slow observation, notes, patterns. Mila considered it. Patterns, yeah, like last week. The creek, the lower pasture. They're fixating on that. Exactly, Theo said, leaning over her notes. Maybe it's not about training them like normal horses. Maybe it's about understanding what they need to protect. For the first time in weeks, Mila's shoulders relaxed slightly. We can try it. We can map out their triggers. Use the paddock in sections. Gradually reintroduce each other. Theo grinned. Operation Reunite. Mila blinked. Operation Reunite? We need a name, Mila. Makes it official, he said, mock saluting. Plus, it sounds heroic. Mom would have liked it. She laughed despite herself. Fine, Operation Reunite, but it starts now, and it's meticulous, step by step. We chart every reaction, every flinch, every pause. Nothing is random. Over the next few hours, they moved horses into separate paddocks, observing, noting how Solara circled the lower fence, how Nightwind froze at the creek bank, how their gaze flicked toward the trees at certain wind shifts. No progress. Not yet. But for the first time, Mila felt a glimmer. They were learning. Not teaching. Learning. Theo watched her, a small smile on his face. We'll get there. Slowly. Mila exhaled, letting the tight knot in her chest loosen just a fraction. Slowly, she echoed. And for the first time in 2 months, the fear of losing the horses felt slightly less absolute. The sky was heavy with low clouds, promising rain, as Mila adjusted Solara's reins for what felt like the 100th time that morning. Her hands were sore, her arms trembling, and every attempt to calm the mare ended in the same exasperating cycle, pacing, pinned ears, and anxious eyes. Theo hovered near Nightwind, whispering stories, moving slowly, but the stallion's body remained rigid. His eyes flicked nervously toward the creek, muscles taut, ready to bolt at any sudden movement. Mila let out a frustrated groan. Nothing works, she muttered, slapping the saddle. We've tried everything, every routine, every approach, and they still won't listen. Maybe we're not cut out for this. Theo shook his head. We've got to keep trying, he said, voice tight with worry. If we give up, we'll lose them. I can't. Before he could finish, Solara suddenly jerked to the side, spooked by a gust of wind rustling the reeds near the creek. Mila lost her footing on the slippery mud. One boot slid, her hands went slack on the reins, and she tumbled sideways, scraping against the wet ground. A sharp, searing pain shot through her arm. She yelped, clutching it, and the world narrowed to a hot, stabbing ache. Theo's shout rang in her ears. Mila! Nightwind reacted instantly. Instead of panicking, he shifted protectively, moving between Mila and Solara. Solara, too, circled warily, nuzzling the ground near Mila as if assessing the situation. Their panic was gone, replaced by alert attention, protective instinct. Mila struggled to sit up, tears stinging her eyes, not just from pain, but from frustration and despair. I can't do this, she gasped, voice breaking. I'm not Mom. I'll never be Mom. We can't. Theo knelt beside her, gripping her other hand. You can. We've been seeing it. Small progress. They notice us, Mila. They're not just scared. They're trying to protect us, even when we don't understand. Mila's breath hitched. Pain radiated from her arm, throbbing, but her eyes tracked Solara and Nightwind. They weren't running, they weren't angry, they were vigilant, watching, caring. She swallowed hard, biting back tears. They're protecting us? She whispered. Theo nodded, voice steady. They've been trying all along. Maybe we've been looking at it wrong. Maybe it's never been about us being good riders. It's about understanding them, listening to them. Mila exhaled slowly, the tension in her shoulders loosening slightly, though pain still shot through her arm. Okay, she said, voice trembling. Okay, we try. One more time. And for the first time in weeks, the hopelessness that had threatened to overwhelm them was tempered by a glimmer of understanding. They hadn't given up yet. Not completely. Solara lowered her golden head toward Mila's shoulder. Nightwind's dark eyes met Theo's with a steady, approving gaze. In that moment, the siblings realized that the horses weren't the obstacle. They were the guide. It was terrifying. It was exhausting. But maybe, just maybe, they weren't as lost as they had feared. William Hawthorne hadn't had a full day off in months, let alone 3 in a row. When he finally cleared his schedule, Mila and Theo could hardly believe it. 3 days, he said, boots muddy from a quick check of the lower pasture. I'll help, but you have to promise. No shortcuts, no heroics. We do this smart. Mila and Theo exchanged a glance, a flicker of hope igniting. We promise, Mila said. The first day was spent reviewing the siblings' observations. Together, they spread out maps of the paddocks and sketches of the creek on the barn floor. William, though less skilled with horses than his late wife, had a keen eye for patterns. See here, Mila pointed, tracing Solara's pacing near the creek bank. She circles this patch every time the wind shifts. Theo added, Nightwind freezes by the lower fence like he's guarding something. William leaned over, tapping his chin. They're not reacting randomly, he said. They're calculating. They know more than we think. What if we structure your approach around their rhythm instead of trying to force ours? Over the next 3 days, the family worked like a small machine. William helped devise ways to test the horse's comfort near each trigger point safely. Mila handled Solara, practicing measured movements, rewards for calm behavior, careful observation. Theo handled Nightwind, using quiet voice and patience, letting the stallion dictate distance and pace. They tested small exercises, walking along the edges of the lower pasture, pausing when the horses tensed, retreating when necessary. William guided them on safe positioning, reminding them to watch body language, breathing, subtle shifts of weight. By the 3rd day, a remarkable change was visible. Solara allowed Mila to approach the creek bank without circling frantically. Nightwind remained calm when Theo moved closer to the lower fence. Both horses seemed to sense the coordinated effort, the unity of the 3 humans acting deliberately. Mila's voice trembled as she watched Solara's ears flick toward her without tension. They're listening. They trust us more. Theo grinned, brushing mud off Nightwind's flank. And they're teaching us, just like Mom would have. William nodded, a rare smile breaking across his face. Your mother would be proud, not just of the riding, of the way you're observing, listening, working with them. That's what mattered to her. That's why they respond. For the first time since Eliza's death, the siblings felt a surge of hope. The breakthrough wasn't just about the horses. It was about understanding their mother's methods, her patience, her instincts, and applying them together as a family. The creek, the bank, the triggers. They were no longer just obstacles. They were lessons. And with William there, even if only for a few days, Mila and Theo saw a path forward, slower, steadier, but real. That evening, William insisted on a small picnic, a rare pause from the relentless work of the ranch. Mila and Theo helped carry blankets, sandwiches, and a thermos of tea to the edge of the paddock, where the horses grazed cautiously, still alert, but calmer than they had been for months. Don't worry, William said, spreading the blanket. No lessons, just us, and them if they want to join. Solara approached first, golden coat catching the last rays of sun. Her movements were careful, measured, but she lowered her head near the blanket, nostrils flaring as she sniffed the air. Nightwind lingered at the edge, black mane glinting, muscles coiled but relaxed, watching the family. Theo held out a hand slowly. Hey, Nightwind, you can come closer. It's safe. The stallion tilted his head, ears flicking. A step forward, another. Soon he was standing just a few feet away, eyes soft but watchful. Mila handed Solara an apple slice. Good girl, she whispered, stroking the mare's neck. Solara nudged her gently, tasting the apple and then resting her muzzle against Mila's shoulder. William settled on the blanket, smiling as he watched his children interact with the horses. Your mother would have done this exactly like this, he said quietly. No force, no hurry, just patience, respect, presence. The sun dipped lower, turning the sky into streaks of gold and rose. Mila leaned against Nightwind's shoulder as Theo fed Solara another slice of apple. The horses moved freely around them, circling the blanket slowly, sniffing, nudging, but never panicking. I can't believe it, Mila murmured. After all this time, they're actually calm. Theo laughed softly, wiping mud from Solara's flank. They know we're trying. They can feel it. And maybe they missed us too. William nodded, sipping tea. It's more than training. It's trust, connection. Your mother's lessons weren't about winning competitions. They were about understanding, and you're learning it. Together. For a long moment, the 3 humans and 2 horses existed in quiet harmony. The sounds of the ranch softened to a gentle symphony. Distant crow of a raven, the murmur of the creek, the occasional nicker from Solara or Nightwind. Mila rested her head against Nightwind, feeling the powerful rhythm of his breathing, steady and warm. Theo lay back on the blanket, Solara's golden mane brushing his cheek. The tension of the past months, the fear, frustration, doubt, seemed to dissolve in the glow of the sunset. This is nice, Mila whispered. Like family again. Theo grinned, eyes shining. It is. And it's just the beginning. The horses, once symbols of struggle and grief, now lingered near the humans, calm and present. In that sunset-lit paddock, Mila, Theo, and William understood something profoundly. They weren't just rebuilding trust with the horses. They were rebuilding the family itself, one quiet, shared moment at a time. The morning was still, almost too quiet. The creek glistened under the weak sunlight, swollen from the recent rains. Mila's stomach churned as she stepped onto the soft, muddy bank. Her gaze flicked to the overhang where her mother had fallen months ago. Theo stayed close, hand brushing hers for reassurance. We can do this, Theo whispered, though his voice wavered. We just have to go slow, like Mom taught us. Mila nodded, gripping the reins of Solara tightly. The mare's ears twitched, eyes fixed on the rushing water. Nightwind stood beside Theo, massive and tense, muscles coiled, nostrils flaring. Okay, Mila said, taking a deep breath. Step by step. We'll go together. We watch each other. We watch them. The first step toward the creek felt like stepping into a storm. Solara hesitated, head high, tail flicking nervously. Mila mirrored her calm, speaking softly. It's okay, girl. We're right here. No rush. Theo shifted, offering Nightwind a steady hand. You've got this, buddy. We're safe. We're right here. The horse's initial tension was immediate. Solara pawed at the ground, eyes darting to the lower bank, while Nightwind's legs stiffened, ears flicked back. But this time, Mila and Theo didn't push. They paused. They waited. They let the horses lead, guiding only with presence and gentle words. Step by step, Solara moved closer, sniffing at the mud, then lowering her head. Nightwind followed suit, cautious but attentive to Theo's quiet reassurance. Each inch forward felt monumental, a fragile truce with fear itself. Mila swallowed hard, thinking of her mother. She would have waited. She would have watched. She would have understood. That thought anchored her. We're safe, she murmured again, as much for herself as for Solara. Halfway across the narrow stretch, the bank groaned beneath them. Heart hammering, Mila froze, but Solara remained steady, muscles tense but controlled, as if guiding her human through the danger. Nightwind shifted slightly, bracing the soft earth, alert to every vibration. Theo's eyes widened. They're helping us. They know. A surge of awe and fear mixed inside Mila. This wasn't just riding. This wasn't practice. This was trust, memory, and protection all wrapped together. The creek, once a source of terror, now became a proving ground for everything their mother had taught them, and everything they had learned in her absence. By the time they reached the far side, breath ragged, hearts pounding, the horses stood calmly beside them. Solara nuzzled Mila's shoulder. Nightwind pressed gently against Theo, grounding them. Mila's voice cracked. We made it. They trusted us. Theo exhaled, wide-eyed. They weren't afraid of us. They were protecting us, just like Mom would have. The creek no longer seemed like an enemy. It was a bridge, a test of patience, observation, and empathy. And for the first time in months, the siblings felt the quiet thrill of triumph, not in victory or applause, but in understanding. Mila knelt, brushing mud from Solara's mane. They've been showing us the way all along. We just had to pay attention. Theo rested a hand on Nightwind's flank. And now, we really know. We're ready. The sun peeked through clouds, casting light across the water. In that moment, the creek became not a place of fear, but a testament. The bond was rebuilding, stronger, deeper, and alive with their mother's legacy. By the start of the 4th month, the breakthrough at the creek had shifted everything. What had once been a place of fear was now their training ground. Each morning, Mila and Theo approached with careful determination. The horses, alert but calm, mirrored their confidence. Solara moved steadily beside Mila, ears flicking to her for reassurance. Nightwind followed Theo, muscles relaxed yet ready, trusting his guidance. The siblings practiced walking along the bank, trotting short stretches, and finally cantering, all while observing the horses' reactions, rewarding calm, cooperative behavior. "Good girl," Mila whispered as Solara crossed a narrow bend. "See? We can do this." Theo laughed, guiding Nightwind through a shallow curve. "You're amazing, buddy. Just like Mom knew you would be." William watched from the bank, a rare smile breaking across his face. "Look at you three. This is exactly what Eliza would have done. Patience, observation, respect. And it's paying off." The family devised structured exercises for the next month. Guided passes along the bank, rewarding calm behavior, paired trots, letting the horses see each other while moving. Mini circuits, combining turns, pauses, and gentle canters through the creek. Solara and Nightwind began anticipating the exercises, responding almost before the siblings gave cues. Their body language relaxed, tension eased. The horses weren't just tolerating the creek, they were cooperating, alert but confident. Mila glanced at Theo as Nightwind mirrored Solara's movements perfectly, step for step. "They're actually working together," she said in awe. "Like Mom always said, they're one soul." Theo grinned, brushing mud from Solara's flank. "And we're finally in sync with them. We can do this." By the middle of month 4, the siblings had built a daily routine. Morning creek crossings for observation, midday trust exercises and grooming, afternoon practice of turns, circles, and paired movements. The creek, once a symbol of fear and grief, had become a laboratory of understanding, where the siblings matched their mother's patience and intuition. Each successful attempt reinforced trust. Each careful correction strengthened the bond. For the first time since Eliza's death, Mila felt real confidence. They weren't just surviving the horses' mistrust, they were thriving in it, learning from it, guided by the instincts their mother had nurtured. By the end of the month, the lower pasture no longer represented danger. It had become a stage for mastery, trust, and unity. And Mila, Theo, and the horses were ready to begin the final simulations for the annual summer riding competition. It was early morning, the air crisp and wet from the previous night's rain. The creek sparkled in the dawn light, now tamed by the siblings' careful months of training. Mila led Solara. Theo guided Nightwind, both nervous but ready. Today, they were attempting the first full trial run, a routine combining the bank, paired trots, and gentle canters, simulating the flow of the competition. "Remember," Mila whispered. "Slow, steady, watch their cues. We go together." Theo nodded, gripping the reins lightly. "We've got this." The first steps were cautious. Solara and Nightwind moved along the bank, ears flicking toward the humans. They crossed the narrow bend near the creek with minimal hesitation. Solara nudging Mila's shoulder as if to say, "I trust you," Nightwind pressing lightly against Theo's side. Mila felt a thrill, then a pang of anxiety. "Okay, now the trot," she murmured. They signaled simultaneously. The horses moved, Solara and Nightwind side by side, rhythm synced perfectly for the first few steps. Then, at the far bank, the ground softened unexpectedly. Nightwind froze, muscles taut, while Solara pawed nervously. "Wait!" Mila shouted. Her voice was calm but urgent. "Step back! Just a little!" The siblings' months of training kicked in. Instead of panicking, they mirrored the horses' caution, slowly guiding them back to firmer ground. Theo's hand rested lightly on Nightwind's neck, whispering reassurance. Mila stroked Solara's mane, murmuring calm words. Then, instinctively, the horses took control. Solara pressed against Mila, stabilizing her as she slipped slightly. Nightwind shifted, bracing the soft earth, his massive frame anchoring Solara and Mila both. Together, the two horses protected the humans, reacting with intelligence and timing that went beyond simple obedience. Mila's breath caught. They understood. Theo's eyes were wide. "They weren't afraid of us. They were watching out for us, just like Mom always said." The trial continued, now with a new rhythm. The horses moved as a single unit, alert to each other and to the humans. They trotted and cantered along the creek, pausing where the bank was soft, mirroring the siblings' movements perfectly. The routine felt alive, a conversation between horse and human, a dance of trust and understanding. By the end of the run, Mila and Theo were breathless, mud-smeared and exhilarated. Solara nuzzled Mila gently, Nightwind pressed against Theo's side, calm but proud. They pulled it off," Mila whispered, voice thick with awe. "They really did it." Theo laughed, leaning against Nightwind. "We're ready. They're ready. And I think Mom would be proud." William, standing on the bank, clapped slowly, a smile breaking through his usual worry. "That's her legacy, right there. Not the ribbons, not the tricks. This, understanding, patience, trust, you've done it. All of you." The creek, once a source of fear, had become a testament. Fear-faced, trust earned, and a bond stronger than anyone had dared hope. As the final month of training approached, the rhythm of the ranch felt almost like a heartbeat. Mila and Theo rose with the sun, leading Solara and Nightwind to the creek, each step deliberate. The horses crossed the banks with steady confidence now, pausing only where the earth still felt soft, ears flicking to the siblings for reassurance. Each morning, small refinements were made, adjusting posture, softening rein pressure, timing turns just right. Midday brought moments of quiet focus. They groomed the horses, checking tack, brushing coats, whispering memories of their mother to keep her presence alive. Groundwork exercises became more fluid, the horses responding without hesitation, their trust evident in relaxed muscles and calm eyes. Mila caught Solara's gaze and felt the same certainty she had once seen in her mother's eyes. Theo laughed as Nightwind nudged his shoulder affectionately, a silent acknowledgement that the bond was no longer fragile. Afternoons were reserved for full routines. The siblings ran through circuits of circles, trotting stretches, and paired canters, timing every step, every bow, every subtle signal. Solara and Nightwind moved in perfect unison, a single rhythm flowing between them. Mistakes became almost non-existent, each hesitation met with patience and gentle guidance rather than frustration. By the last week, the sequence was second nature. The horses anticipated the siblings' movements, adjusting themselves almost before cues were given. Mila and Theo practiced the full showcase routine repeatedly, moving with confidence and clarity, learning to rely on intuition as much as training. The creek crossings, once a source of anxiety, had become natural transitions, adding flow and grace to every segment. Evenings were often spent sitting quietly on the hillside, the horses grazing nearby, the sun painting the pasture gold. William sometimes joined them, watching the horses with pride. "You've done it," he said one evening. "It's not about winning. It's about what you've built here. That trust, that's your mother's legacy, alive in every step." Mila and Theo exchanged a glance. All the frustration, the bruises, the near falls, the months of doubt, it had culminated in this steady, unshakable rhythm. The bond with Solara and Nightwind was no longer tentative. It was strong, responsive, and alive. The ranch, which had once felt empty and fragile, now pulsed with confidence. The horses, the siblings, even William, everyone was ready. The annual summer riding competition awaited, but for the first time, the Hawthorne family felt not fear, but certainty. They could face the arena together and honor Eliza in every movement. The morning of the competition arrived bright and warm, the arena buzzing with townspeople and competitors. Colors flashed from banners, hooves clattered on packed dirt, and the scent of hay and horses hung thick in the air. Mila and Theo led Solara and Nightwind to the edge of the arena, hearts pounding, muscles tense, but their eyes calm, steady. "This is it," Mila whispered, adjusting Solara's reins, "just like we practiced." Theo grinned, patting Nightwind's neck. "We've got this. We really do." The starter's horn sounded. Mila and Theo led the horses forward, stepping into the familiar rhythm they had honed over 5 months. Solara's golden coat glimmered in the sunlight, Nightwind's black mane shining like polished obsidian. Every movement was deliberate, every cue anticipated. The routine began with circles and arcs. The horses responded instantly to subtle shifts in weight, tiny verbal cues, even the slight tilts of the siblings' bodies. The crowd watched, captivated by the fluidity, unaware of the months of struggle and near failures that had led to this moment. Midway, the routine required the horses to trot side by side along a narrow strip of arena. Solara and Nightwind moved perfectly in sync, mirroring each other's steps, ears flicking to their riders only when necessary. Mila glanced at Theo. He nodded. The trust they had painstakingly built shone in every coordinated motion. Then came the final test, the signature bow. The moment that had always defined their mother's skill, the pinnacle of connection between horse and rider. Mila guided Solara close to Nightwind, lowering her neck in a graceful arc. Nightwind mirrored the movement flawlessly, muscles rippling, head lowering in perfect harmony. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. Solara rested her head gently over Nightwind's neck, and Nightwind responded with a soft nicker, a gesture that spoke of shared understanding, loyalty, and triumph. The horses weren't performing. They were communicating, revealing the depth of their bond and the siblings' devotion. The crowd erupted in applause, cheers rolling across the arena like thunder. But Mila and Theo barely noticed. They were caught in the awe of the moment, the fulfillment of months of labor, patience, and love. Now came the hardest part, waiting for the official results. The judges conferred, murmuring and tallying scores. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Mila bit her lip, pacing. Theo fidgeted with Nightwind's reins, whispering encouragement to the horses. William stood nearby, arms crossed, his own anxiety visible. "I don't like this," he muttered. "No matter how well you did, judges, they could be harsh." Mila shook her head. "We followed every routine. We stayed calm, precise. We did it, Dad. We did it." Theo's fingers drummed nervously on Nightwind's neck. I just want them safe." Finally, the head judge approached, a clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. The crowd hushed. "You've completed the routine flawlessly," the judge said. "Your timing, synchronization, and handling were exceptional. First place by unanimous decision." Relief hit Mila and Theo like a wave, and they stumbled into each other's arms, laughter and tears tangled together. From the edge of the arena, the debt collectors stepped forward, stern, experienced horse people who had seen countless horses bought and sold. "Well?" William asked, his voice tight. One of the collectors nodded. The terms were clear. Win, pay with prize money, keep the horses. You've won. The prize money will cover the debt. The horses stay with you. Theo let out a shaky breath. "So, we did it?" "Yes," the collector said. "You've earned it. The horses recognize your bond. That counts for more than anything else." Mila hugged Solara tightly, feeling the mare press back gently, Nightwind nudging Theo's shoulder in approval. William exhaled, relief etched into his face. I can't believe it. You both did it." Theo looked at Mila, grinning through tears. "They're ours. We really get to keep them." Mila smiled, brushing mud from Solara's mane. "We kept them, Dad, and we honored Mom." The collectors stepped back, nodding in respect at the family and their horses. The tension that had hung over the ranch for months, the fear of losing the last living pieces of their mother, finally lifted. Solara and Nightwind nuzzled each other gently, sharing in the triumph, the connection now unbreakable. The sun dipped low, casting long golden shadows across the arena. For the first time since Eliza's accident, the Hawthorne Ranch felt whole again. The ranch had settled into a quiet rhythm. The tension that had weighed on every fence post, every stall, had melted away, replaced by the soft pulse of a family and horses finally in harmony. Mornings began with the familiar clatter of hooves on the barn floor. Mila led Solara out to the pasture, brushing the golden coat until it shone, murmuring encouragement and stories of their mother. Theo followed with Nightwind, his hands confident as he checked the tack, speaking to the black stallion in the same gentle tones that had earned their trust. William, freed from the worry of looming debt, sometimes joined them, carrying feed buckets or helping reinforce a fence. His presence was quieter now, a steady support rather than a man weighed down by despair. "You've done it," he said one morning, smiling as he watched Solara and Nightwind move side by side. "Your mother would be proud." The horses themselves seemed transformed. Solara and Nightwind moved with a grace and calm that spoke of understanding and respect. They weren't just tools of performance anymore, they were partners, friends, and family. Each nuzzle, each coordinated step, reminded Mila and Theo of the long months it had taken to rebuild the bond, the patient work, the near falls, the tears, and the laughter. Afternoons were often spent at the creek, not as a source of fear, but as a playground of trust. The siblings guided the horses across the banks with ease, observing, learning, and sometimes just letting them wander, grazing in peace. The water reflected the sky and the horses' glistening coats, a quiet testament to what patience and love could accomplish. Evenings brought simple joys. The family would sit on the hillside, watching the sun cast molten gold across the rolling pastures. Mila rested her head against Solara's neck. Theo draped an arm over Nightwind's shoulders, and William stood nearby, a hand on each of their shoulders. The soft nicker of the horses, the distant rustle of leaves, and the gentle flow of the creek filled the air with a serenity the ranch hadn't known in months. Mila and Theo often spoke of their mother, sharing stories, lessons, and memories. They laughed at her quirks, marveled at her patience, and felt her presence in every careful touch, every moment of connection with Solara and Nightwind. Her legacy was alive, not just in the horses, but in the strength, courage, and love her children had learned to carry forward. And as the stars emerged above the ranch, glimmering over the pastures and the creek, the Hawthorns knew this truth. The bond they had rebuilt was permanent, unshakable, and full of life. The horses, the siblings, and their father had not only survived loss, they had grown through it together. The ranch breathed again, alive with trust, loyalty, and love. And in that quiet golden twilight, Mila and Theo felt a completeness they hadn't known since their mother's absence. The legacy of Eliza Hawthorne was safe, and so was her family. Thank you for listening. If this horse story stayed with you, feel free to like, subscribe, and explore more stories on the channel. Until next time.